Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Another lovely day, I think, on deck. It looks like a little bit of rain still in the forecast for the next couple of days, which, I mean, it's just that time of the year and we could always use it. So I'm not complaining there, but overall, decently nice weather. It rained almost nonstop all yesterday, not heavy, but just like a drizzly rain all day, which was fine because we were indoors having an amazing community meeting. So, kind of, and I know I talked about that the last couple of videos about, what we were doing as a local group and stuff. And one of the reasons why is because if you look at what's happening on a national level, having and building, developing, local infrastructure, local communities, local tribe, local economies is going to be more and more important. The news is starting to really pick up the story, and it's spreading. It's starting to trend, I believe, online about the food stamp SNAP benefits aren't coming out the 1st of November. And 40 million people, 40 million Americans get SNAP food stamps. And I know we could go into the whole argument, is that necessary, or all of those. I mean, I've looked at the data, and and that's the key word, if the data is correct, it's not as many just sucking off the system as one might think. That there's actually quite a large amount of that 40 million that are working, that are disabled, and that are elderly senior citizens. But then again, like I said, that's the data. But the point is that more and more Americans now are starting to hear about this and realize it because it's mainstream news. It's all over social media. And, what's the saying? We're 9 meals from anarchy. And a lot of people that desperately depend upon that, whether they should or shouldn't, is irrelevant at this point. They're not going to be getting the money that they're used to buy their food. So that means that they're going to have to take money out of their whatever their regular income, wherever they have money, and attempt to buy food and pay all their bills. At the same time that this is happening, and I'm trying to paint you a picture here, so just bear with me. At the same time that that's happening, there are hundreds of thousands of Americans that are either laid off from work and not earning a paycheck, or are being compelled to continue working and still not earning a paycheck. Now, of course, if they work out the budget deal and everything is signed, then they'll get back pay. But as of right now, they're not. So they are trying to figure out how to pay the electric bill, how to pay, the car note, how to buy groceries, how to put gas in their vehicle. If they don't have a nest egg, and statistically, if you look at the numbers, the vast majority of Americans no longer have a nest egg. It's something like 60% of Americans don't really have any kind of a nest egg in savings. How are they doing it? How are people making it? At the same time, you have wars and rumors of wars. Looks like we're about ready to invade Venezuela, and I know we've been hearing that for a few weeks now, but it is building and building. More troops, more weapons, more ships are being moved into place. In fact, they're now so close that in some parts of Venezuela, you can actually see the American ships from the coastline. So they're getting close. You've got National Guard troops and federal agents all over the country in cities rounding up illegals, but they're not just rounding up illegals. They're also arresting a lot of Americans for interference. They're going up to just random people that might have the appearance of looking Hispanic and just randomly kind of surrounding them, asking them if they're Americans, to prove that they're Americans. This is, I mean, it's show us your papers, so that's happening. We have an economy that is in shambles. We have a dollar that's losing its value. Gold has gone up over 60%. Silver's gone up over 75% since the start of the year. And the U.S. dollar is continually losing its value, so it has less purchasing power. We have prices of stuff skyrocketing because of tariffs. We have, just the massive divide that is widening in America due to politics and religion and ideology and all this kind of stuff. There's threat of terrorism everywhere. There's increased violence, increased mass casualty events, active shooter events. All this kind of stuff is happening. And again, now you're going to be taking away people's food. Your people are being laid off. There's businesses, companies shutting down, closing up shop, laying off people. There's people being laid off because their jobs are being replaced by AI or robotics. And then while all that is going on, you have a White House administration that is talking about potentially invoking the Insurrection Act. There's more and more talk about the President Trump, being the president yet again for another term. In fact, Steve Bannon, if you believe anything he says or not, said the other day that there is a plan in place, and there is a third term organization or movement, in that the MAGA group trying to push this, whatever this plan is. And so it starts to paint the picture of a possibility of creating a lot of civil unrest. In fact, it was just the other day I reported that the president sent a memo to the Pentagon for them to develop a team, a rapid response team from the National Guard to respond to civil unrest here in the United States, to create a specialized team. And so I just want you to sit back and think, and I'm not saying that this is what's happening or that this is the plan. I'm simply saying that due to the many, many circumstances going on, it could look like that there is a plan in place to cause this massive civil breakdown, so that there would be a valid reason to invoke the Insurrection Act, and then eventually some type of executive order, martial law, suspend elections, all kinds of stuff could happen. And the level of panic that will start to really sink in as these things worsen. And if this government shutdown continues to last, in the next few weeks or so, we could start seeing more things happening. A lot more things. And I know the government shutdown is mostly focused on people being furloughed, laid off, or working without pay. And then now also the SNAP benefits, the food stamp benefits. But it's way more than that. And I pointed out the other day, it's not that I'm opposed to these things. It's that I'm pointing out these things because they could have some serious repercussions. The vast majority of charitable nonprofits in this country exist due to federal funding. There are some that accept none or get very little, but most of the ones that do a lot of big stuff, a lot of the ones in your communities that run food banks and that, or help single moms or help people pay their rent and the utilities when they struggle, or, that kind of stuff, assisting them with housing and food and everything, that are nonprofits. These are not government agencies. These are nonprofits. They are very largely funded by federal funds. And those have been cut off. They're not getting them. And so I'm telling you, there is a major recipe for disaster being built. Now, it could all be averted. Things could change. But we as preppers, we see things as possibilities, especially when they're strong possibilities, and we take action so that we can be prepared in case they do happen. You know, there's no guarantee there will ever be a nuclear war or a grid failure event, but many of you prepare for that. And so I'm telling you that right now, things are starting to fall into place strongly. And now with this more public awareness of food stamps being cut off for 40 million Americans, it's becoming more and more real about what could possibly happen. And you need to prepare for that. You need to prepare for the increase in civil unrest. You know, people aren't working. They lose their jobs due to the shutdown. They lose their jobs due to the AI. They're not getting their food stamps. You know, they're not getting assistance from any other organization. There's organizations that you know, help people that are on drugs to try to get off of it. There's these organizations that help people with mental health disorders, and they're trying to help them. Many of them are getting to the point that they're no longer able to help people, or at least as much, because funds are being cut off. And so I'm just warning you, this new budget that the president is trying to get passed, his budget, if that gets passed, it cuts off the funding for a lot of programs. And I understand these are programs that are unconstitutional. These are programs that our federal dollars should not be paying for. I completely agree with that. But when we rip the rug out from under a lot of people, it could cause some major disruptions. It could cause a lot of chaotic civil unrest. And so you need to be prepared for that. You need to be stocking up. You need to have a plan to either, depending on where you're at, you know, if you're still in the city, are you going to bug out or are you going to bug in? I mean, if you're bugging out, you better do it ahead of time. You don't want to be bugging out when the civil unrest is happening. If you're bugging in, if you're staying put, you better be prepared to kind of lock down for a while. If things get bad, depending on your location, it's going to depend on how bad it gets. Or how bad it could get. But I'm telling you, there's a lot of little pieces that are starting to fall into place right now that could, whether it's just happening or it's being planned, could be putting us into a place as a nation where a lot of civil unrest could happen, violence, increased violence, Insurrection Act, potentially even martial law, and the added police force and National Guard troops on the ground, and then wanting to put more in specifically to deal with civil unrest. If you read that order, it specifically says to deal with civil unrest. So I'm just telling you. I'm not making predictions. I'm not telling you that this is going to happen, but I am telling you that you need to be prepared because things are lining up almost perfectly for this kind of stuff to happen. So you should probably be getting ready. Folks, get your houses in order. Prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.